30 seconds, that's about how long you've got to convince someone to keep watching. And YouTube literally built a metric around that exact moment. They call it your intro, how many people are still there after the first 30 seconds. And that one number is the multiplier on everything, because if people bail early, YouTube quietly stops recommending your video to anyone new, no matter how good the back half is. So retention is the single biggest lever you've got, the multiplier on every view, every subscriber, and every dollar. But most creators lose that 30-second battle without ever knowing why. They just stare at the view count, shrug, and upload again. Here's the thing though. Buried in your analytics is one graph that shows the exact second people got bored and left, and a fix for the worst drop you can draft in about 10 minutes.
Kay here, and I'm the designated skeptic on this channel. When somebody says retention tricks, half of you picture cheap gimmicks. Fake countdowns, screaming the first line, some hack to trap people. That's not this. And look, everyone's hunting for these tricks. It's one of the most searched things in the whole game. But a trick that keeps someone watching a boring video 4 more seconds just teaches YouTube your video is boring. Retention isn't a trap you spring. It's whether the thing is actually worth watching.
Michael here, and if you want proof this is the whole game, YouTube basically tells you. Their own help page says the search and discovery system exists to help people find the videos they're most likely to watch and to maximize long-term viewer satisfaction. Read that again. Satisfaction. Not clicks, not tags, not how often you post. Did people watch, and were they glad they did? That's the target the machine is aiming at.
I'm Liam, and I'll set up the fight we're having at the end. There are 2 ways to chase retention. Hook people as hard as you humanly can, or genuinely serve them and trust that keeps them. Those 2 paths pull apart more than you'd think, and picking the wrong one can quietly tank the exact number you're trying to raise. Hold that thought, because it's the real argument of this whole video.
So before we dig in, be honest with me. Ever poured days into a video that just died in the first minute? Yeah. That's exactly what we're fixing. Here's the plan. First, we open a real retention graph, and I'll teach you to read it in about a minute. Then the 3 places viewers actually leave and how to fix each one, starting with that brutal first 30 seconds. Everything we build, the hook checklist and the retention worksheet, is free over at grow.professorerica.com. Let's go read your curve.
Alright, let me actually show you where this lives, because most people have genuinely never opened it. It's not hidden, it's just 3 clicks deep, and nobody ever told you it was there. Here it is, straight from YouTube's help pages. You sign into Studio, you pick a video, you open Analytics, and you find the audience retention report. And one important note before you panic at the shape of your curve. Click See More, and it compares your video to other videos of similar length. So you're judging yourself against reality, against what's normal for a video your size, not against some fantasy flatline at 100%.
Interested, too full. Interested, picture your video running left to right, and the line is just what fraction of your audience is still watching at each moment. Interested, it starts at everybody, 100%. It's mucho best. Interested, a cliff right at the start, in that first 30 seconds. Interested, a slow slide through the middle. Interested, a dip, where a chunk of people leave all at once, and every so often, a little bump back upward. Interested, learn to read those 4 features and you can diagnose almost any video.
And YouTube literally names these moments for you inside that report. The intro, which is just how many people survived the first 30 seconds. Dips, which they define as moments people skipped or stopped watching. And spikes, moments that got rewatched or shared. So the platform is handing you a labeled map of every good and bad second in your video, and almost nobody looks at it.
And here's the mindset shift that changes everything. That graph is not a report card you're supposed to feel bad about. It's a to-do list. Every dip is a note that says fix this exact part. Every spike says do more of that. You open your analytics not to admire the numbers, but to hunt down the one moment that's bleeding viewers the worst.
So now we've got a map with the leak points marked. Let's fix them in order, biggest first. And the biggest on almost every video is that cliff in the opening seconds. Quick honest ask while we are here. If this has been worth your time so far, hit like, then subscribe and ring the bell. I know everyone asks, but this one is free, and it is how a small channel like this actually grows.
So, the opening seconds. This is where you get the most retention back for the least work, because it's simply where the most people leave. And there's a clear, honest way to build one.
First, diagnose why they're leaving because the fix depends on the reason. It really comes down to 3 drop-offs. A cliff in the intro almost always means the video didn't match what the title and thumbnail promised. A dip in the middle usually means a boring stretch or a tangent. And a spike is the happy one, someone actually rewatched. Match the fix to the cause and you stop flailing.
So let's build that opening. The goal is one honest sentence that makes leaving feel like a mistake, and there's a repeatable shape to it, 4 moves in order. 1. Cold open the payoff. Lead with the result or the surprise, not a slow hello. 2. Name the stake. Say what they lose if they scroll away. 3. Open a loop. Promise something you'll pay off later so they've got a reason to wait. 4. Cut the throat clearing. Delete the who am I and the please subscribe from the very top. And this is exactly where an AI tool earns its keep. You hand it your topic and your title, and you ask for 10 different opening lines using those 4 moves. In seconds, you've got 10 options to react to instead of a blinking cursor. Think of it as a brainstorm partner that never runs out of angles, not as the writer.
Quick though, 10 AI hooks are 10 drafts, not 10 green lights.
Exactly, and that's the whole point. You read those 10, and you delete every single one that promises something the video doesn't actually deliver. Because here's the trap. A hook that overpromises wins the first 3 seconds and then loses the next 30 the moment people realize they've been had. And that bounce is the exact thing that wrecks your retention. The tool gives you options. You supply the honesty.
So the opening's fixed, and it's honest. But you don't just win them once. You've got to keep re-winning them all the way to the end. And that's about pacing.
Okay, they're past your intro. So here's the question that trips up almost everyone. How do you keep someone watching all the way to the end? You never stop re-winning them, and that is entirely about pacing.
Think of the whole video as a chain of little re-hooks. But roughly every 30 to 60 seconds, you drop a tiny promise about what's coming next, so there's always a reason to keep watching. And you break the visual rhythm too, a cut, a graphic, a quick clip so the screen never becomes one long static shot. Those pattern interrupts are what flatten the slow slide in the middle of your curve.
And the bluntest fix of all. Use the curve to find your single most boring 30 seconds and just cut it. That mid-video dip you spotted earlier? That's usually a tangent, a rambling setup, a section that made sense to you and to nobody else. You don't need to make it interesting. You need to make it shorter or gone entirely.
Now, chapters. These split your video into labeled sections that a viewer can jump around in. And straight from YouTube's own help page to add them yourself, the first timestamp has to start at 0000. You need at least 3 of them listed in order, and each chapter has to run at least 10 seconds.
Careful though, chapters aren't free retention on a short video.
Right, and that's the honest caveat. On a 2 or 3 minute video, chapters can actually hurt you because you're handing people a menu to skip the parts you worked hardest on. Chapters shine on the longer stuff, a tutorial, a deep dive, where letting someone jump straight to the part they need makes them more likely to stay and to come back next time. Match the tool to the length.
So that's the Honest Toolkit. A fair hook, honest pacing, and cuts driven by your own curve, with an AI tool speeding up the busy work. Which lands us right on the argument Liam promised. How hard is too hard when it comes to hooking people? Here's the fight that decides how you make every video from here on. To win retention, do you hook as hard as you possibly can, or do you just serve the viewer and trust that keeps them? Kay says most creators badly underhook and leave views on the table. Liam says hook harder advice is exactly how people talk themselves into clickbait. Kai, you start. Why hook harder?
Because attention is brutal and nobody owes you a watch. A genuinely great video with a limp, mumbly opening just dies in silence, and that helps nobody. So front load your best moment. Open the loop. Make the first line impossible to scroll past. Most beginners are way too polite in the first 10 seconds, and that politeness is quietly killing their retention. Hook hard, then deliver.
Hold on though. Liam, he says be bolder. Where exactly does bolder cross the line?
The second the hook writes a check the video can't cash. And here's the mechanism people forget. Overpromise. And sure, you win the click in the first 3 seconds. But then your intro cliff gets worse, not better, because everyone who showed up for the thing you promised leaves the instant they realize it isn't coming. You didn't raise retention. You inflated the click, then torched it. Serving the viewer isn't the soft option. It's the one that actually holds the line.
Sure, but there's a huge gap between lying and just being confident. Plenty of people hide a genuinely great video behind a timid, apologetic intro. Telling them to hook harder isn't telling them to lie.
Agreed. A truthful, bold hook is the goal. A dishonest one is the trap.
And now here's what actually ends the argument, because the platform already settled it. YouTube optimizes for the watch, not the click. A bounce 3 seconds in is one of the worst signals you can hand it. And their own free title test, Test and Compare, crowns the version with the most watch time, not the most clicks. So a hook that wins the tap but loses the person literally loses.
Which means we're each about half right, aren't we? You do have to hook harder than your polite instinct wants. You just can't cross the line into promising something you can't deliver.
You are, and that's the no-spin verdict. So here's what I'd actually do on every single upload, the smart play. Hook as hard as you can while staying completely honest, and match the promise your title made in the very first line. Then rehook, pace, and cut the boring parts using your own retention curve. Lean on AI to speed up the drafting and the trimming, but you make every honest call. Do that, and you're not tricking the algorithm. You're handing it exactly what it's built to reward, and it pays you back with reach, for free, for years. Quick recap before we go. Retention is the lever the whole algorithm pulls, watch time and satisfaction, and your retention curve is a map of exactly where you're winning and losing. Fix the intro cliff first, then rehook and pace all the way down.
The rule I'd burn into your brain. A trick that keeps a bored viewer watching 4 more seconds just teaches YouTube your video is boring. Earn the watch, don't trap it.
And one thing to do tonight. Open your last video, find the single worst dip on the curve, and fix just that one moment. You'll learn more from that than from 10 more uploads.
The part nobody advertises. No hook on earth can save a video people don't finish. The opening wins the first 30 seconds. The rest of the video has to keep the promise the whole way down.
Next in the series, we go past ad revenue and stack the other income streams on top. Affiliates, products, sponsors, so one algorithm change can't zero your whole income.
If this finally helped you read your own retention graph, hit like and subscribe and send it to a creator whose videos deserve more watch time. We're building this whole roadmap one link at a time, and the hook checklist and worksheet are free at grow.professorerica.com.
Here's the one I want you to settle in the comments. Are you going to hook harder or serve harder? Tell me which and why.
Until next time, stay curious and stay sharp. Professor Erica signing off.